you're missing something in that dialogue. You're missing something in that conversation because it's not taking into consideration that you're not that, you're someone else trying to do something with that data. And she says it's smart enough and you need to start giving it enough credit to tell it the truth. We don't like to be lied to. Nobody likes to be lied to. You need to start telling the truth. I just thought it was a fascinating conversation about thinking about truth and what you are trying to get out of these AI movements and changes and applications, and very relevant for HR. And I am an HR leader, not that I am an employee sitting in front of my computer. I'm an HR leader who's trying to create the best HR experience. Help me here, right? Instead of I'm an employee, what's a better HR experience? Starting to be very open about, because the computer should then understand that you have limitations because all your systems aren't where they need to be, maybe, right?
Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Welcome to Spill the Tea on HR Tech, everyone, where we focus on the hottest HR tech news everyone needs to know to be in the know. And we break down the news of the week and help you make sense of it, of what that means for our industry and how it can impact our organization. And we are recording today on September 11th, 2024, a sad remembrance for many of us who lived through the September 11th, almost 20 plus, going on 30 years now ago. So our hearts go out to all of those who had family and friends who were impacted by September 11th so many years ago. But it is also fall event season. So hopefully this week we'll be able to provide you some updates on things you're going to get ready to use in your upcoming fall events. I'm your host, Stacey Harris, Chief Research Officer and Managing Partner for Sapient Insights Group. We are a research and advisory firm, if you were unaware. And joining me today on the road at his first event for the fall season is Cliff Stevenson, our Director of Research and Principal Analyst for Sapient Insights Group. Cliff, welcome back to the show. We can see the beautiful Las Vegas window behind you there. Always love the velvet curtains, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm out here in Las Vegas at the lovely Venetian Resort for Oracle's big event, Cloud World, which they have combined with Suite World this year. So it's even bigger than ever before. And there's really a lot going on here that I'd love to talk about. And also a lot going on just in the world in general. So you want to get started, or?
Yeah, it's HR tech heavy season, right?
Yes.
I mean, as we know, the vendors have most of their conferences. This week is Oracle. Next week will be Workday Rising. Joining us there from Sapient Insights Group will be Susan Richards, our founder. And so if you are looking to touch base with Sapient Insights while we're there at Workday Rising, Susan Richards will be there. You and I will then be, along with the rest of our team, at the HR Technology Conference in 3 weeks, right? So for those of you who are kind of following along and want to make sure that you're going to get a chance to catch up with us at the HR Technology Conference, please be aware that we have a panel on women in HR tech with our CEOs, Jerry Zipper and Danielle Bouchon. And that's going to be on data governance and stewardship and how that's going to impact women in your organization. Really, really powerful conversation. And then you definitely want to drop by my keynote mega session where we'll be talking at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, because we had a couple times where we said maybe Tuesday, but on Wednesday, where we're going to be sharing our Voice the Customer highlights with Sapient Insights Group 27th Annual HR System Survey. So I'm working on that deck right now. I just got off my last call talking about it. There's some cool stuff, you guys. I put a little post out on LinkedIn if you're wanting to see some of the things that we're going to be talking about. That will be in the Mandalay Bay if you're looking for it. We're also going to be doing, Cliff, you and I, on Thursday afternoon, a presentation on skills management. And we're going to be talking about how to build your skills environment, technology agnostic approach to skills management with you and I. So Cliff, that will be exciting because we'll be able to move some of that skills conversation to the second day. And then in between that, there's lots of Ask the Expert times for everyone to come and touch base with us. Cliff, what are you looking forward to most coming up at the HR Technology Conference?
Broadly, I really get a lot of joy from meeting people in person. I know it sounds weird, and it was a common refrain amongst many of the people in our profession to jokingly say after the pandemic that they even miss Vegas.
Yeah.
But this is why, because yes, it can sometimes be It can it's just work. It is what it is. And for those that are outside, it seems, oh, you're going to Vegas. And it's like, well, if we're going to a conference room and we're going from one thing to another. And as you can hear, we've got a lot of events that we're going to be at. But it can be a very wonderful kind of work when you're getting to interact with people and meet them in person. There's a lot of talks besides our own that I would love to be able to attend, but also getting a chance to see the new vendors. I love going into the startup pavilion and seeing what's coming in. We always report on that every year, and that brings me great joy because that's so neat to see how market needs are being addressed by these companies. There's always a lot of energy, and it's really wonderful. So I think those two things, getting to see people and getting to see all the new fun and exciting companies.
Very good. Well, I will say the Startup Pavilion is always fun, and I actually enjoy the opportunities where kind of in between events when I see people in the hallways. Like that's some of my favorite time because I generally don't get to see as many people as I want to see because we're a lot of people practitioners who I've met over the years are running from session to session. And it's really in between in the halls where I get to see everyone. So I'm looking forward to that. So by the time you guys are here, this will be running right into HR Tech. So please stop us. Please say hello. We love to hear from anyone out there who listens to the podcast. And let us know what you like about it or what you might want to hear more of. So we'll also be at the iSolved event on October 7th through 10th. That's going to be in Orlando. And at the Unit 4 analyst event, November 6th and 7th, which is going to be in Philadelphia. And at the UKG Aspire event, November 12th through 13th, that's going to be back in Las Vegas. And then for those who maybe are following Workday a little bit more, Workday's European event got moved from November, where it was originally, and London, to now it's going to be December 12th through the 14th. And that will be in Amsterdam, I believe. So, So things are changing. So we are working all the way up till the end of this year, Cliff, on events and conferences. So if you guys are out there and about, come and see us. But you're at the first one, Cliff. So maybe a quick update on what you're seeing with Oracle and all of the updates they're giving. I'm gonna make one prediction. The word AI probably came up in the last couple of days. Yeah,
you won it. Collect your prize from the AI machine. Yes, that is definitely the big news. A sort of a running joke during all of the sessions has been, you can't leave the stage unless you say AI. That's been brought up. Interestingly enough, I would say Larry Ellison's keynote yesterday on the 10th, Tuesday, was probably the least AI centric, although it was brought up quite a bit because there was a lot more on one of the other breaking stories here that I'd be remiss to mention or to not mention is that Oracle is now working with Amazon Web Services. So AWS is now part of the infrastructure for data. And that is very big news for anyone that uses that as their infrastructure platform, because that had not been the case prior. In fact, during Larry Ellison's keynote, part of was bringing up the gentleman who runs AWS and conversing about how that partnership came to be and what it will unlock.
That's really going to be interesting because I know Larry was trying to create the competing solution for AWS and Azure, which are the two big players in this space, right? Did he say they're backing down a little bit from having their own cloud environment, or are they just being better partners? Is that sort of the conversation?
That's it. The language that's often used is that one will not sit on top of the other, but that they're the same system, and they really mean that it will work the exact same. One's not replicating the other or, masking the other, that it will just work as the exact same system all the way through. So it really is what you said, a sort of deeper and true partnership.
Gotcha.
So,
okay, very cool.
There was that. Now, there was a lot of talk about AI and Oracle Fusion, which is, their sort of suite across all of these, having all of these HR applications, is completely revamped so that AI sits at the core of every aspect of it. I found it very interesting that they went into quite some depth on the talent space and how AI will be used there. They're seeing a lot of use cases, and I'll give them a lot of credit for putting customers first. I had a few chances to have one-on-ones with some of the executives, especially from product, And we talked quite a bit about how every presentation and every breakout session has always involved a customer story if it wasn't completely a customer panel, and focusing on the actual use case of AI. And what they found was, perhaps unsurprisingly, that people wanted to sort of dip their toes in the water, right? They wanted to test things that didn't have too much risk, but could help ease administrative concerns, something that sounds very familiar to anyone that listens to our show or watches our show on YouTube, which we should mention we have as well. If you're trying to find us, by the way, an event as an aside, an easy way to do that is watch our YouTube channel for a few minutes so you get a better idea of what we look like. And we are, yes, always wearing pink, so don't worry. That's an easy way to spot us. But yeah, they found that the use of AI in performance management has been probably their number one use case. So they said, okay, that we need to spend more time in our talent management suite of applications. There's been a lot of interest in job descriptions. So there we go again in the recruiting and onboarding space. But they're also using it in just straight database management. So harkening back again to Larry's speech yesterday, he is hoping to reduce security concerns by instituting AI as a DBA, as a database administrator. So while definitely human oversight has been the watchword, ideally the end goal is to make not only a more efficient platform, but a more secure platform by removing the human element whenever possible that could be part of a security breach. Because looking back on most of the major breaches, they have to do with the human element, right? It's not some program going through a ton of passwords, right? It's social engineering. I still don't see how AI can completely fix that problem, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, this one I'm sure they probably got roasted just on the messaging of it, right? I get where they're coming from, and I do think any of us know that it's, anytime you got to go download, upload, and data, you have risks of people having access who shouldn't have access, and also anytime you have passwords that are being passed back and forth, even if you're doing it electronically, like you've got risks. What I do think it's a bit of we've got to figure out is that as we're having, just like we did with all of our other technologies, as AI is making some decisions for us, we've just got to build in more and more calibration, more and more oversight. In a way, we've got to watch performance. One of the things we're going to talk about is a conversation with, I think, the anthropology group.
Oh yeah, Anthropic that makes Claude.
Anthropic, sorry, yeah, thank you. See, I'm going shopping is what it is already.
That's what I was thinking the same. Yeah.
But the Anthropic group and their engineers, and what I was so impressed with was how they focused on, I never trust the AI. I'll always double check what it's saying, right? And that's a really important part of the process. It can help me speed things up, but I've got to keep testing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, it's something that, we talk about, and Oracle well knows, and is trying to do that. But, you get excited. You want to talk about all the capabilities. You want to talk about the future. But yeah, as you said, sometimes you can go too far. And people will say, we're not trying to replace humans here. We're trying to make humans better. And I think they know that, and it's been really it's been really neat to see some of the things, like I mentioned, hear them talk about talent, to really push that. We've been tracking them very closely in our voice of the customer rankings, which come from you, the listeners, or anyone that's taken the survey, I should say, and viewers. And I think you'll all be interested to see, how that all plays out when we go through all that during your keynote.
Well, were they clear that they have now moved everything over to the Redwood user experience platform yet?
It is not 100%, but that is what is going to be the case. And so that, for those of you that just may be hearing this for the first time, I tend to think of it almost as like an OS, right? Yeah. As an operating system, in that it's a sort of common language platform, however you want to think of it. So there's for an end user, you'll see one consistent visual design, one consistent set of sort of languages and uses across whatever it is you're doing in your Oracle platform on the Fusion side, HCM side.
And I'm not sure that we're seeing it in the user experience data this year yet. So it'll be interesting to see if we start to see some of the changes in the user experience over time as they get more and more customers on that and doing the actual update, right, and moving to it. So good to hear they're moving that direction. I think
Yes.
there'll be more updates to come. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also mentioned that they, starting about 18 months ago, although they've always had a good sort of customer success team, they formalized that, and they've been showing some of the metrics, and they're really making concerted effort to address any concerns on the vendor satisfaction issues, customer service, customer care. And in that one, I think we will see some movement positively in our voice of the customer rankings, but tune in. You'll find out more during that. But yeah, it's been really great. And like I said, we'll be back here. And thoughts also for those of us in the community that are here for this, and then Workday Rising, and then HR Tech, not getting to see their families. So like I said, it is work still.
But we have other vendors who
Yes.
are doing a lot of stuff right now in prep for HR Tech, right?
Really cool stuff. Yeah, obviously, I've been thinking about Oracle, but that does not take away from some of the really cool, neat news going on, sort of classic HR, spilling the tea on HR Tech type of news. We've got some acquisitions. So Paylocity is going to acquire Airbase. So they are a spend management software solution provider. So, there's a lot of stuff here on procurement, on corporate cards, expense management, something near and dear to my heart. In fact, definitely one where I've used different solutions. I personally have never used Airbase before, but obviously was aware of them going through. And these kind of goes back to my old days as an HR practitioner, being at a smaller company. There wasn't a lot of HR tech, plus that was a long time ago, to choose from. We definitely used some compensation management tools, strange enough, but we needed for benchmarking. And expense management was a key one. That's one where it doesn't matter how big your company is, that's something you need to get right. So great to see Paylocity thinking the same way.
Yeah, Airbase is a really big pickup for them. This is putting them in direct competition with what we're seeing happening with Rippling and their message of, if you come into our organization, we're going to cover not just the things that an SMB needs in the HR space, but we're going to cover all the other sort of onboarding and technology and things, right? It also puts them a little bit into the finance space. So kind of in competition, not fully, but with a little bit of where we saw some of the ERP start out with, right? And so, because they've got a bill pay accounts payable automation, which means there's some element in there of that. They've got the expense management, as you talked about, procurement. I mean, this was a pretty big pickup for them. So I'm interested to see where this, takes them. It is a challenge I see for a lot of mid-market and SMB organizations that they have fewer options if they're not going to buy one of the big boys, right? In getting a combined application of HR and finance technology, right? Generally a lot of the ones that are still out in the market for that SMB market tend to be on the older side sometimes, or they're looking at sort of really brand new cutting edge groups that don't have a full suite of HR, right? Like a Zoho, which just started getting into HR, right? So I think this is a big move for them. I think we'll probably hear a lot more about it in the next couple of months. I think it is all the pays. We know what they are: the pays, the Paycom, the Paycor, the Paylocity, the Paychecks, right? They're all going to have to figure out what is their message for differentiation. Because I can promise you, when you look at the data this year at the HR Tech conference, there will be some interesting shakeups, right? As to who's playing in that space.
No spoilers, though?
No spoilers? No. We'll see.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That was my first thought, too, was thinking about how Rippling had acquired, some IT services to go along with what they provided. Also speaks to an interesting trend that we've seen strongly come on in the last few years, which is that small businesses are looking for services that had previously been really only in the realm of enterprise level organizations. And they're saying, no, we need that too. This is important. And saying, okay, we hear the market. These providers are saying we're going to jump in. And I agree. I think it's a strong move. Speaking of acquisitions, the Zealous Group, and that's a portfolio company of funds advised by Apex. You might know them as that. But probably if you're just thinking about the applications, Benefex was the one that was underneath them, have acquired Benify. And so that is very interesting that, you were mentioning the pays in the payroll. In the benefits space, there's a lot of companies that I guess you could call the benefits. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well, does it, as the pays? But you have your benefit focus and your Benefis and your Benefex, and now two of those have been consolidated. Now they didn't do it for that reason, just for name recognition or any of that, but rather to sort of add together. Really, it was both of them, I think, and I don't know exactly what led to this, but it seemed to me that there was a nice sort of bringing together a Venn diagram of what each were missing in terms of capabilities of the solutions, right? Some were able to offer certain benefits and some sort of didn't have those partnerships as well with some of the, I would call, the more modern benefits. And now they're able to consolidate that into a more singular platform.
Well, and I think the big thing there is the global benefits, right?
Yeah.
We know there's not many players in the global benefit space. Thomson International, which was picked up by Mercer a few years back, is one of the few sort of global benefit platforms that was a technology play, not a services play. There's a lot of services that do that, but not standalone technology. And so this was another one of those players in that international space, because international benefits are a little bit, are by far a lot different than US based benefits. Here in the US, benefits administration is 90% for the most part about healthcare, right? And then the rest of it is all the other benefits that we offer, retirements and, wellness programs and tools and those kind of things. But it's heavily driven by what happens in the healthcare space, right? Outside of the, US in the international market, there we have much more benefits conversation being driven by this idea of a holistic benefits package, a total benefits package, because in many cases, healthcare is handled by governments or by other entities outside of that. And so, this has been a big space for a while where I think organizations have oftentimes managed that by themselves, right? Or use their big enterprise platforms to manage that or outsource a lot of this. So a consolidation isn't surprising here. I do think that it will be interesting to see how the big enterprise HRMS platforms respond to some of this consolidation in the space, because benefits is an area they oftentimes have neglected as far as updates and maintenance and integrations. So I will be interested to see if some of this consolidation drives some updates in that space that we might be seeing come from the big guys, right? So.
Yeah, and I should mention rewards and recognition, I think, is another thing that Benefex now gets from Benefy. And that's pretty interesting. And that's another area, I think, that we're seeing some movement in, not as drastic as some others, but people are thinking about that a little more. So and so we've really hit the AI part of your bingo card very early on, but there has been a lot of news around AI in addition to all that. Yeah, I know we've already talked about that, but one, I think, kind of key milestone was reached in the last 2 weeks, and that was that OpenAI, the biggest of the AI companies, and this is not my opinion, this will be proven by the stat I'm about to say, and they're the ChatGPT company, if you didn't know that already. They hit 1 million paid business users, right? So this is not just those of you that might be adding on just at home for whatever you're using it for, search and that sort of thing, but 1 million paid business users. If you are a regular listener, viewer of this show, you will know that Stacey and I have talked about this for well over a year, saying that AI is a resource-intensive tool. It isn't just as simple as a piece of software. It requires a lot to get done in terms of hardware and infrastructure to bring these services. That's part of what makes it so powerful, is that it's able to sort of consolidate things into a way, and that natural language processing and the large language models. But anyway, that being said, we talked about this needs to be able to pay for itself. Right now, a lot of companies are giving you this for quote unquote free, but that only works if there's enough users. And now this is, I would say, a very key milestone. And it was just in April, only 600,000 users. So there's a reason we're talking about AI so much. It's fastest growing by a country mile.
It is, without a doubt. We're definitely seeing those numbers double in the HR side as well. It's not everybody yet, so I always try and put people so they're not freaking out. You are not behind.
That's right.
But I do think that it's because it's interesting that we get this milestone hit by OpenAI at the same time that we also got some news which isn't here in our links, but if you Google it, you'll find it, where Microsoft is actually showing that they are starting to have several people who adopted and have now stopped, who've pulled back from adoption numbers and their use of the Copilot solution, because it wasn't quite doing what they needed it to do at this point. And so I do think that we are seeing this sort of kind of a dance, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Because I think everyone's trying to figure out, is this really worth the financial investment? So then hitting 1 million paid business users is a really good stat. Question is, will they keep the paid business users? Can they retain that ownership? Everybody's trying to find out if it can do something for them now. Question is, can they retain it, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of that sort of, I guess still in the OpenAI and thinking back of the news that we talked about. Oh, let's see. I'm trying to think how many shows, but let's not try and think of the math. Yeah. We'll just say it was
math today.
Yeah. Okay. Too early for math. Remember, I'm 3 hours back from you. That we talked about this. I think the term that's often used is as a coup. But Sam Altman, one of the founders of OpenAI, was sort of ousted from his leadership role by the other founder, Ilya Sutskever. If I'm mispronouncing that, Ilya, feel free to correct me or anyone that knows. But during that sort of shake-up, and if you recall, Sam Altman ended up returning, Ilya left and is founding a new company, Safe Superintelligence. And that'll be 1 billion, because there's no small numbers when dealing with AI.
Yeah, the startup raised 1 billion. Like that, they raised 1 billion. Like yeah, so it's just important to note that that's not even where they're headed from revenue.
Good point. This is that's the sort of floor, the foundation that they're going to build upon. Just 1 billion. And what I find interesting, because obviously it's new and this has just begun, but just in the name alone, I think we're seeing how they're looking to differentiate, right? That the word safe is literally the first word of the company, I think reflects an understanding of how the market is viewing AI. And as you just said, Stacey, the HR market, our people, right? They have been, I think, wisely hesitant to completely just adopt AI and just have it used for everything. There's a lot of cool things going on, but HR, as always, tends to take a wait and see approach, for good or for ill. And I think in this case, it's for good, because we just don't know. And people want to see some use cases. How is this going to be valued? And what are the dangers? Because that's always the most important. It's so much different working with people and with humans whose lives could be impacted in a lot of different ways by the use of AI, especially if it goes wrong, right? We want to make sure that anything we do is done positively. And so, maybe the adoption rate for the HR community isn't as high as you might see in other groups, but I think that's a good thing. And I think that this kind of shows that, okay, we're seeing that happen now, and we want to address that.
Yeah, speaking of that, I mean, because these are sort of how this is happening at the enterprise, big level, right? But then we get a story from Vizir, right, about their workforce AI edge that they're saying that they're giving organizations. Digging into this news announcement, I think this is another way to sort of say that they're doing their artificial intelligence agents,
Vizir V.
right? Yeah, the Vizir V. So Cliff, are you hearing a lot of conversation, even at the events that you're at, where people are talking about these intelligent agents and what they're doing for organizations, right?
Yeah, agents is another one, right? You can add that to your bingo card. We're going to be talking about that more and more since we first brought it up. Yeah, you don't see as many people thinking in terms of sort of the hardware or the actual terminology, right? It's in the same way we just use AI as a blanket term. It's the same with the use of agents. That really is how companies are taking AI, applying it into these things. They talk about use cases. They say, how can I do this? One of the questions we ask in the survey is, does your provider, your payroll, your HCM provider, whoever, have an AI component to it? And that a lot of people just aren't sort of aware that that stuff's there, because they're thinking only in terms of how do I get this specific thing done, rather than sort of experimenting. Who has time to go out and say, okay, well I'll try this sort of theoretical. They need to know, no, I'm doing this right now. I need to be able to look through all of the payroll and find, anomalies, or see if there's instances of fraud in, some of the time transactions by looking for things that don't make sense according to a pattern that only AI could do. But, those are the sort of things I think that people are looking for. And I think that's what led to Visier sort of putting this together, right? They're focusing on questions like, which employees are most productive? Those are the big questions, rather than just saying, use AI to help me write a job description. Yeah, that's great. That makes a ton of sense. But the true power could be if you can get it to do these things. And I think that's what Visier is hoping to sort of direct people to thinking about,
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see as we get into the HR Tech conference how much more of this we see on the floor, right? Of this AI enablement in a way that is going to move the HR conversation forward.
Absolutely. And, a couple other sort of AI news, because I want to talk about, some people news as well, that Anthropic, who you mentioned before, has launched Claude Enterprise. So Claude is sort of the main competitor amongst a very large amount. It kind of depends on how you think of it. I would say in the day-to-day personal home use of AI, the sort of more advanced chatbot that's often used for search or for writing prompts, it's always been a little more, in my opinion, and I think on some other reviewers' opinions, Claude is better for the sort of creative type writing, for helping with that sort of stuff, a little more literary rather than a search engine that you might use Gemini or Copilot or ChatGPT for. So now they're trying to take that and move it to the business side. And that's
and that goes along with if ChatGPT is able to sell, 1 billion enterprise license. Claude's now coming out and saying we have sort of a similar comparative tool that might be more valuable, and it'll be interesting to see how it compares, right?
Yeah. There was a really wonderful video that you sent along. I had seen one similar as well. And of course, as always, links will be in the comment to when we post this. Look for that. Also in the first comment on the YouTube is usually where I put in all these links. So however you do it, that'll be there. But there's one on YouTube that talks to a lot of the prompt engineering experts from Anthropic, from the makers of Claude, talking a lot about sort of things like, I really like this section on metaphors and how people talk and have to think about how it would respond to the way people go on. I've probably used so many metaphors during our conversation just today, right? I've talked about dipping your toes in the water and diving in, and imagine writing that to more or less a computer and then having to understand what you mean by that. If you ever typed in something to your AI assistant and go, I'd like a deep dive onto this, keep in mind, it has to understand what you mean by that to avoid any mistakes.
I really liked her conversation about her honesty with the AI chatbot. So if you do get to listen to this, I think that whole defining the prompt engineering and the stuff that Cliff was talking about, like defining the language. But the other piece was this conversation by one of the prompt engineers on the panel, who was talking about how there is this theory that if I kind of pretend I'm a teacher who needs X, Y, and Z, right? Or pretend I'm an audience and give me this answer, right? What she's now doing is she finds that it does better for what her prompts are is, I am a data engineer. I need an answer for an audience that looks like this. And it was an interesting conversation about, well, when you lie to it, when it doesn't know who you are, when it's sort of interacting with you as if you are whatever you said you are, you're missing something in that dialogue. You're missing something in that conversation because it's not taking into consideration that you're not that, you're someone else trying to do something with that data. And she says it's smart enough, and you need to start giving enough credit to tell it the truth. We don't like to be lied to. Nobody likes to be lied to. You need to start telling the truth. I just thought it was a fascinating conversation about thinking about truth and what you are trying to get out of these AI movements and changes and applications, and very relevant for HR. And I am an HR leader, not that I am an employee sitting in front of my computer. I'm an HR leader who's trying to create the best HR experience. Help me here, right? Instead of I'm an employee, what's a better HR experience? Starting to be very open about, because the computer should then understand that you have limitations because all your systems aren't where they need to be, maybe, right? So that's the conversation I think we need to be having, right?
That's right. And Amanda Askell is her name. And there'll be timestamps, actually. If you go to that video, as I said, follow the links that we provide, you can see timestamps if you want to jump to that section, because I agree. I think that is one of the more fascinating conversations to be had, because prompt engineer is a real job. Anytime we talk about, AI may take some jobs, that's true. But as we've often used the metaphor before of the previous sort of revolutions, of the loom or the Industrial Revolution, it also created jobs as well. And people are coming out of college and doing really wonderful work. And it's important to know how to interact with these machines. Well, I know that we're kind of wrapping up, but I also wanted to take a moment, if we could, just to do a little people news. We saw that, after 8 years, Aaron Green is the CMO at SAP.
SAP SuccessFactors. Yeah.
There we go. We'll be leaving. He ran the Pride at SAP. He was the executive sponsor at that. Yeah. The pictures on that post, again, it'll be one of the links, are amazing. There's just a lot of joy there. You love to think about the impact people had at their jobs that related directly to their title, but then also the things that they did that were maybe outside of the job title that probably had just as strong of an effect on the culture and of the people that work there. And you love to see that.
Yeah. And I got a chance to meet Aaron Green several years back, and I appreciated the approach that he took, but I think also that whole group that was at that time, and sort of thinking about the infrastructure and the management of the message of SAP around that. This follows in the July, which again, they wrap up in August, of executive board members who are focused on marketing and some finance, and them being Julia White who is the chief marketing officer with the board position, and the chief revenue officer, Scott Russell. And so you're kind of seeing a dissolving of all the dissolving is probably not the right word, but a movement out of a lot of the people who sort of worked underneath that overall picture of what Julia White had for the overall SAP. And I think just to kind of keep in mind, I don't know if it's going to be the case or not, if they're going to replace Julia White's role or not. They don't have, I think, an open out on that conversation right now. But I do think that marketing is becoming a bigger conversation for a lot of these organizations, whether to keep it at the role it's at, to put it in different roles. Where does it fit in the organization? Marketing is one of those areas that is being highly affected by AI. And it is an area we have lots of friends in the space who are sort of getting ready to sort of rethink what their role is in this space. I think we're going to start to watch Aaron Green's just one example of people who sort of move into other roles, who bring that expertise of enterprise thinking with them as they come into other organizations. And I think we're going to have an opportunity to really reshape the idea of what we tell and sell to buyers through some of this shakeup across, because of the AI issue. I know that sounds a little silly, but there's so much changing right now. But buyers want more data, and they get most of their data off of the internet before they even start making outreaches to many of these big organizations. So that marketing message has to be very clear. It has to be a good picture of what the buyer is that works best in our environment, and a good picture for the buyer of the solutions that actually have something they need, instead of trying to sell smoke and mirrors, which is what we see happens a lot in tech space. So this is one of many examples of what's happening in this shakeup. And I think hopefully this will give us some conversations in the marketing space about what do we tell the buyers, right?
Absolutely. And, if I know that you're going to be too modest about it, but there was another big article that came out that I have to mention, and maybe you could just give us a little bit about this, because I think it's what you were just talking about. Well, obviously, it's from your, this has been top of mind for you. But it's as this shakeup, all these changes are happening. You wrote an article on why your HR system strategy must be adaptable to be successful. That was an HR Executive magazine that is out, as always, links, down there. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that this is a perfect wrap up and encapsulation of everything that we have talked about how we have to approach this idea of these changes and what's happening, and the sort of right approach on this whole idea of what is AI doing to HR and how it's changing everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that and you'll note this is I really talked about how strategy, HR system strategies, you have to think about them the same way you think about anything else in your business about modeling out possible futures, right? And as you're modeling out possible futures, you have to then think about what's the scale and scope that I need to be able to pivot to within my organization. AI is just one of many conversations in that. We are going to see AR transformations, right, in the market. That is going to be happening. We're already seeing it. But I think we have to be very focused on understanding that HR isn't changing. What we do in HR, bringing people into an organization, ensuring compliance is up to par, strategically working with our business leaders on how we manage our workforce and how the resources are applied across our organization in a way that benefits the employees and the company and the outcomes we're trying to achieve. None of that is going to change. And we are already doing that as HR professionals. What is going to change is maybe some of the tools we use to get there. And that's the piece that we call AI enabled HR. And we talk a little bit about this in this article about you have to have a strategy to begin to get there. You cannot, even as the smallest organization, the strategy is going to give you the opportunity to think about that modeling. The strategy is going to give you the opportunity to think about various levels of tech capabilities that fit into a tech stack that creates, you're more of an architecture now than you are a mechanic as an HR technologist, right? And so that I think is going to be the conversation that we have to be having at HR Technology Conference and all of this year and all of next year is not how do we get ahead of AI, but how do we become better architects of the technology environment in our organization so we can use AI the way it needs to be used.
Yeah, that's a brilliant metaphor. A good way to wrap up. As we were kind of talking in the green room beforehand, it's reminiscent of the digital transformation, right? That we're sort of doing an AI transformation or a digital transformation 2.0, and it should be thought of that way, not just we need to plug in a new piece of technology, but we need to think about, as you said, couldn't have said it better, we need to be architects and not mechanics. No offense to my automotive technician friends. We love you all.
Many of them say the same thing. There's no anymore now. You've got to like diagnose the whole thing, right?
Good point.
Yes. Yeah. Cliff, we went over again because we're
Yes.
ramping up to the HR Tech conference, but it's been a good conversation. I think for anybody who's going to be at any of these conferences that we're going to be at, please come over and have a conversation with us if you are dealing with these issues, right? As we wrap today, we are going to be having at the HR Technology Conference available to buy several big segments of the Voice of the Customer paper. We also have a buy now, pay later conversation where you can buy this year's report, which will be wrapping up, and you'll automatically get next year's report. So those bundles with some discounts through the HR Technology Conference participants are all out there. Be on the lookout for them. Because all this topic is coming from the data that we get from the customers. We're not just sitting here going, well, this is what I think is happening. We're literally seeing it come out in the data. And so that's part of what you're getting a chance to see is a little bit of a preview of what that data is and how you can maybe use it for your company. Cliff, we're also, as we're wrapping up today, I think just want to remind people that if they are trying to get more information about where we'll be at and what we'll be doing, that we do have our newsletter. So please go to our website, sign up for the newsletter. It's going to give you all the first information about when everything is available, when everything's being launched. And I do want to be sure to remind everybody that if you like these podcasts or you want to hear more about us, be sure to listen to the whole HR podcast environment, which is going to have also our CEO Teri Zipper's HR episodes on HR We Have a Problem. It will also have in the next coming weeks some special sessions that we're going to be running at the HR Tech session. Cliff, I know you're going to be heavily involved in that, right? We'll be doing a wrap-up kind of event panel that the whole team's going to be talking about. So we'll get to be right there on the site getting real live reactions to HR Tech. We've also got several companies we'll be talking to next week, right?
A lot of companies, iSolved and Paychecks and many, many more. We're going to be doing a lot of live video from the floor. Let me know if there's any specific ones, Stacey, you want to call out there, because I know I'm just touching a few.
Yeah, no, we have a couple. So I know we're going to be doing a couple podcasts with salary.com. We've also got Zeroed In. We've got, I think, a couple events with speaking opportunities where we'll be sort of sharing those conversations with several of our cohort members who are practitioners. We're going to be bringing them in to have a panel with them. So we have 4 members of our big annual HR System Strategy cohort program that we run every year here. and they'll be coming in to share their insights on what they're seeing from the event. So you'll be getting the practitioner's live view of it. So all cool stuff. So yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah, in fact, one of our cohort members, it was Deanna Forston, in fact, met up with us last year. She was the first one to take advantage of the opportunity to come when we were doing a live recording with UKG to get a signed copy of your book. So look how that has sort of all come around. Really wonderful.
Well, as we're wrapping up, everyone, I know we're going to be sure to stop us. We'll be giving hugs out in the hallway too, because I'm a big hugger. Also, if you want to stay up to date on what's happening, if you aren't on YouTube or doing the podcast straight away, we will be tracking some updates on LinkedIn. We'll probably be doing some updates on X as well as Instagram. So if you want to get some screenshots, follow us there. And Cliff, that's it for our production today. We're over a little bit today, but I want to thank Brand Method Media Group. I want to thank our marketing team who gets all of this out. And thank you to our listening community, because we couldn't do this without you. That's it for this episode of Spill the Tea on HR Tech. We hope it has been just the brew you needed to start the engines running this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks, but probably a little sooner than that this time, because we're going to do some stuff from the HR Tech Conference with another pot of boiling hot HR Tech updates and insights. So thanks, everyone.